Hey guys, Nick here. Going to talk to you today about earnest money. What I would encourage you to do is if you haven't gone and watched my video about due diligence, go back and watch that. That's going to help you a lot because earnest money or the earnest money time frame is the part of a contract where you've gone through due diligence, you've negotiated and gotten credits. Basically, everybody is on the same page, buyer and seller, to say, hey, we're going to move forward and we're going to complete this transaction here in a certain amount of time. Usually the earnest money time frame is anywhere from a week or two. It could be longer, 30 days, but normally you're not going to have that much longer. Like it's not going to go 6 months. So that depends on the situation. Anyway, let's talk about earnest money. So what you're going to do is you are going to write a contract. Part of that contract we already talked about was price. Then there's your due diligence amount. And then there's your earnest money amount. It's negotiable. You get to pick and figure out what you're going to offer. Seller, you're going to be able to determine if that's what you're going to accept. But the earnest money amount is paid within 5 days of going under contract to a closing attorney. Okay, they keep it in escrow, and that money is there. So as you get past due diligence and that time frame is over, well, then when you're in earnest money time frame, that money is set aside. So in case for some reason you either back out as a buyer and you just don't want to buy the house for whatever reason that might be, or let's say you're trying to get a loan and you lose your job or you get transferred, or you just decide, hey, my loan's not going to go through for whatever reason, I can't finance this property. Those are two pretty common reasons why you might back out or fall out of a deal during your earnest money time frame. Well, that money from the attorney, the closing attorney, is going to go to the seller. That's their insurance or compensation, that if anything happens from a buyer standpoint during that earnest money time frame and the buyer can't complete the transaction, then at least the seller gets something for their time when they were off the market, they couldn't sell the property. So that's basically your overview about earnest money. Here we have it, the standard offer to purchase and contract 2T. We're going to scroll down. You've seen this before, especially if you saw the due diligence money video. So here we're going to talk about earnest money. Now there's a couple different types. Okay, there's initial earnest money, and that is due within 5 days. You can see it right here of the effective date of the contract. That was an awful circle, but you know what I'm doing. And then we have here additional earnest money. And that is interesting because you can basically identify a time and a date where, well, the time is 5 p.m., but a date where you're going to deliver that. Again, it depends on the type of contract you're doing. If you want to extend out that amount of money, or maybe you want to offer your additional earnest money or initial earnest money, and then you want to add in some additional earnest money, maybe to compensate that seller or the seller is requesting it based on the timeline, you can go ahead and do that, okay? Page 2. Right there in bold print, we have earnest money deposit. So number one, if you write it in the contract, then it gets accepted and fully executed. Everybody signs it. Then yes, you owe that definitely within that first 5 days. If not, there's some things that the seller can do, such as terminate the contract if you don't get them that money. So it's kind of an important thing. Make sure you get them the earnest money. And obviously I would help you out with that if I'm working as your realtor. But anyway, earnest money deposit. So this or the additional earnest money deposit or any other monies, you can see here, have to be deposited promptly and held by the escrow. So that tells you it's a lot different than the due diligence. So the earnest money amounts do not go to the seller. Obviously, we'll make sure that it gets to the right person. This will be credited, you can see right here, to you as a buyer, if you're a buyer listening to this, at closing. So let's say your $2,000 due diligence money was given to the seller, and then you had another $2,000 for earnest money, although that might be a lot. Well, that's like you already paid $4,000 towards the purchase price. So if you had a $400,000 house and you already paid these monies, so that would be $4,000. So then the remaining balance would be $396,000 you would owe at closing, plus any closing fees and things like that. But just to give you an idea, it does count towards the purchase price. So if you move forward with the contract and you don't back out, then you're going to get credit for depositing that money. Here it is, the 350T. Nobody likes getting this document. Nobody likes filling it out. Unless you just really did not want to buy the property. So what you do is you fill this out, you get all the details checked, and what you do is you look down here and see that number 3, or really there's no number, so box number 3, exercise by buyer of right to terminate during due diligence period. So as long as you terminate during your due diligence period, then you should be able to get your earnest money back, and that's what this document says. Now if you go down here on the bottom, the last 2 boxes are really not good. So second to bottom, buyer gives this notice of termination and alleges that the seller has breached contract. Well, that's not fun. strongly advised to seek legal counsel because you're probably going to need an attorney to figure out what money you're going to get back. We don't want to go there. Hopefully we can avoid that, and that's what I try and do for everybody if it comes to that. Or buyer gives this notice of termination after the expiration of the due diligence period without providing a reason. So that's you just saying, you know what, we're past due diligence, but I want out. Well, it says again, buyer is strongly advised to seek legal counsel before checking that box and signing termination, because really chances are slim that you're going to get your earnest money back. So this is the 350T document. Then over here on that second page, obviously you have the address, and then everybody's going to acknowledge that the buyer is entitled to a refund. So that's the seller side. And basically this is a document that we're all going to sign, send to the attorney, and then the attorney who has the money in escrow, they are going to send it back to the buyer. All right, guys, so that's a little bit of information coming at you about earnest money. Remember, depends on the situation. It depends on, as a seller, what time frame you're looking at, what time frame the buyer is looking at. From a buyer standpoint, it depends on what your time frame is and what kind of home you're going into, maybe what kind of loan you're getting, what terms of the loan or the contract there are. So there's a lot of variables, as always, but I want to get you guys a little bit of information so you have a better understanding about earnest money. Hopefully that helped. Talk to you guys soon.